Okay guys, real quick, let's discuss the tools that you're going to need to process your hides. Obviously you're going to need some type of flushing beam, and a log will do that for you. Then you're going to need something that you can hang the animal from, and any tree branch will work for that. I have a butchering knife that I use to butcher the animals with if I'm going to eat the meat. The same one that I carry all the time. I also have a Mora knife that I use to do all my money cuts with. And you'll see that in the video when we rope skin the raccoon. I have just a Lansky's diamond rod sharpener that I use to sharpen all my knives with to keep them razor sharp. A flushing knife, this is a fairly small one so you can put it in your backpack. A tail stripper, again, very small. I can put it in my backpack, makes the job a whole lot easier than trying to use 2 sticks, but 2 sticks will work if you don't want to carry a tail stripper. A small game gambrel that I can hang from the tree, and a couple of lengths of rope. And that's pretty much all I need. You know, 1 piece of rope to attach the gambrel, 1 piece of rope to attach to the hide to strip it off. I find sisal rope works really good for that because it grabs onto the hide. You'll see in the skinning video that I do on the raccoon that I use a regular piece of like climbing rope that I just had laying around, and it works fine, but this stuff works better. Okay, I've done a few animals and I can tell you I've experimented with different ropes, and the sisal type rope works about the best because it grips really well onto the hide. So those are all the tools that you really need to process your hides other than stretchers, and you can make those again out of any flexible branch, or you can buy commercial stretchers or make them out of slabs of wood. Okay, our next step in this process of tanning this possum is to put tanning solution on the hide itself. Now, you can use a lot of different methods to tan hides. You can use eggs and mayonnaise, you can use eggs by themselves, you can use the brains, you can bark tan it with black walnut hulls or acorns to get the tannin out. Those processes take generally a lot longer than a brain tan or a chemical tan. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this hide tanning formula, and this is not something obviously you're going to carry a bunch of around in a long-term situation. This is a way you can tan hides at home for fur, things like that, if you want to sell the hides later. This is a bottle that we sell on our website, and you can tan a medium-sized deer hide easy enough with this. Anything bigger than that's going to take multiple bottles, but something as small as this possum will not take but about a quarter of this bottle. So something this size would do this possum, a raccoon, and probably a fox. And all you do with this is you spray it on, squirt it on, whatever the case may be, and you rub it into the hide really, really well. And you've got to get it on the whole hide, okay? So every little nook and cranny of that hide that you want to make sure is getting tanned, you've got to get this rubbed into. And then at the end of that, you're just going to let this sit for 24 to 48 hours. And at the end of that, you're going to move on. So we'll get this on here. We'll get it rubbed in real good. And when we're done with that, we'll hang it up again and we'll come back to it. Don't be too skimpy with this stuff, because you want to make sure that you get it really, really good into the hide, because this is going to change the consistency or makeup of the hide from raw hide to a tanned hide. So you really got to get this stuff embedded into the grain of that hide and get it in there good. In the ears, everything that you're trying to save, you really, really want to get this rubbed in really, really good. Like I said, once you've done this, you're just going to hang this hide back up again for another 24 to 48 hours. For a small hide like this, 24 hours is probably more than enough. And I'm putting ample amount of this stuff on here. Like I said, I'm not being too skimpy with it. that I haven't even used a quarter of the bottle yet, and I'm pretty convinced I've got enough on here now with 2 coats that I've got plenty on here. So I'm going to hang this bad boy back up and come back to it tomorrow. So we've let this possum sit on the stretcher now for about 3 days so the tanning solution could change the chemical consistency or the makeup of the hide itself. And we left it hair side in, and now I just turned it hair side out just to see how dry the hair was, because I don't want it soaking wet. Now I'm going to turn the thing back inside out again, and we're going to start working this hide. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we break this hide and get it fluffed up and turned into decent leather that we can use to make something out of. Okay, so what I've done here is I've got 2 things set up right here. I have a piece of that sisal rope with a used cable snare on the other side, tied right here in just a cinch knot, and then stretched between 2 poles out here at the hunter's camp. That way I've got 2 different mediums I can use to break and stretch this hide. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it over this piece of rope, and I'm going to start stretching and pulling it over this rope. What we really want to do now is we want to get this hide broke. We want to open up the pores a little bit and stretch it. And we also want to dry it at the same time. Now, don't worry about some hair coming off on the rope or coming off on you. It's going to happen. The reason you salted this hide was to set the hair. That doesn't keep it from shedding hair. If it's not going to come out in patches like it would had we not salted it, and the hair would have slipped. If the hair slips, it's going to come out in patches on you. So you'll know if you're doing a hide and the fur starts coming off in patches, then the hair has slipped. As long as it doesn't start coming out in patches on you, the hair hasn't slipped any. So don't worry about it if you get a little bit of hair. You can see there's a little bit right there. Don't worry about getting some hair on that rope, because you're going to get some hair coming through for sure. And you're just going to have to take your time with this hide, because now you really have to work it until it's dry. And you would have to do the same thing whether you brain tan this thing or chemical tanned it or whatever. The end process is the same, stretching it and breaking the hide until it is dry is just the last step in the process. You just have to do it, and it takes time. It rained a little bit this morning because it rained last night as well. So this hide got a little bit damper than I wanted it to get, but that's okay. When we're done, we want this thing to look kind of like chamois leather, is what we're really looking for. But we want it to be dry. And I'll break it on the rope first, and then I'll use the cable. Right there's where the tail was. And some hides are thinner than others, so some of them you can put more force on than others. You got to just be careful with that, and that just takes time and feel. You're going to mess up hides. You know, I would recommend starting to tan hides with hides that you do mess up. When you're skinning animals and you mess up a hide that you skinned an animal, you cut a hole in it, or you didn't get the face exactly right, or something didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, that's the hide I'd tan first. Because then if you make a mistake and mess it up or tear it after the fact, it's not as heartbreaking as that perfectly skinned hide that you just ripped a big hole in or tore a big piece of the meat off of. And I clean this off as I go. I clean this rope off as I go to get any residual hair off of it that's on there. And you just got to keep working around the hide. And you want to work it side to side as well as lengthways. And it's going to take time. And I can feel it's starting to dry out a little bit on this back side, which is good. And you can see there's hair coming off on it. But when you turn this hide back the other way, and I'll show you that real quick, you're not going to have a bunch of pulled, slipped hair like you would have on a hide that the hair slipped where it came off in patches. So let me come up here and get this in the camera and you can see it better. It's a little wet still. There's his ears right there. Kind of crinkled up and bunched up because they're a little bit damp. But there they are. There's his face right there. There's his two eyes. Okay. But you can see there's plenty of hair on that hide. It hasn't slipped. It's just hair that's being pulled out. That's coming out where you're getting down to the follicles on the back side, down to the grain. And some of the hair's coming out a little bit at a time, just like he was shedding hair. But you're going to have plenty of fur left on that. Get his arms turned right side out here. Now when you're done with this and it's dry, if there's any areas that are hard, that don't come out soft, then you can just wet the thing down again and put it back, put tanning solution on it again, let it sit for a couple days. You're not going to hurt it any. That's the beauty of that tanning solution. You know, you can reapply it if you need to, because you didn't get an area as well as you should have as far as the coverage goes to tan the hide. And if it's an area that you're going to waste on the hide anyway to make something, then it's really not that big of a factor.